Okay, hello. Hi YouTube. Good to see you today. Excited for this live stream on Pluto. I'm just busy setting up my sound and getting everything updated over here. So I've got a bit of dead space at the moment. Okay, so can I go ahead and check the stream? How's everybody feeling today? I haven't got access to the chat yet. Soon I will. And when I do, then there we go. Okay, so far, there it is. All right, we got Amy Stone, Lynn. Hi, Lynn. Marie. Hey, Marie. Good to see you. Good morning, Michelle. Let's just pop out this. I just want to, there we go, get the chat out and close that. How you doing today, Lynn? Feeling better, Marie? Do that. Okay. And let's see. Okay, it's all good. We're going to be talking about Pluto today, which is super exciting, super fun. Hello, Diane. That's good to hear, Marie. It's good to hear. How's the sound coming through, by the way, peeps? Just give me a little, let me know how the sound is coming through. Everybody can see me well, right? That's good. State of Awakening. Hi, State of Awakening. It's good. The sound's good. That's amazing. Dentisa. Hi, Dentisa. Pamela Lynn. Good morning from Canada. That's right. You guys are waking up over there. It's my afternoon already. Loud and clear. That's amazing. Good stuff. I'm excited for today's conversation on Pluto. Talking about... let me just also move my... Hello from Sweden. Tjena. Hey, Lila. Greetings from Brazil. I'm just moving my desk back over here. Natalia. Hey, Natalia. Excited for today's conversation. Definitely. How many of us on the chat over here know about your Pluto? Are you friendly with it? Are you friendly with your Pluto placement in your chart? Yeah, the screen, the color of the sun is pretty strong. I want to see if I can maybe just change that. Maybe, yeah, that feels a little bit better. Cool. Actually move my camera at the top over there so it looks like I'm not just avoiding you. You're watching from France, Amy? That's good to hear. Actually, I think I need to do something with my streaming program just so that it allows for us to have a... Yeah, okay, it is. I was forced to embrace it. Second house, square the sun. Okay. How many of you know where your Pluto placement is in your astrology chart? For me, it's in the 10th house. Lilia, you were saying it was in the 2nd. Good morning, Elaine. Yes, very friendly with it. It's conjunct Uranus. Fun times. For you, it's in the 7th. Okay. Elaine, you got it in the 10th. Pamela, you've got it in the 4th. All right. 5th house Pluto. 2 5th house Plutos. Miss Venus Fly. Okay. You're referencing 9th house Pluto with the polarity point. So you're familiar with evolutionary astrology. That's good. Let's do a check. How many of you are familiar with evolutionary astrology? 12th house for you. Okay, okay. Yes. Sweet. Hey, Kathy. Long time no see. Love it. Oh, that's fantastic. I'm super happy to see that there's lots of us that are familiar with EA. Okay. And how long have you been studying evolutionary astrology, or like part of it? How long has it been in your life, should I say? The new moon on your Pluto, Kathy. You join? Nice. Happy to see that. A long time? Okay. 4 years. That's good. A few years, Pamela. Okay. So we've got a few that some of you have been in it for a while, which is great. Maybe 6 years, just listening to lectures, etc. That's good. Went back to school for psychology. I mean, psychology and EA definitely are a beautiful match. Pluto retrograde in the 6th house, Sagittarius. Okay, so we have a Pluto and Sag with us. That's cool. I like to have the Pluto and Sages with us. I think there's not much content on the internet for your generation. And I'm definitely paying attention to it, learning a lot about the Pluto Sag generation. My Pluto is also in Sagittarius in the 9th house. Okay. Pluto, Leo in the 2nd. Just started checking out EA. That's good to see, Joanna. So I'll do another check here quickly. In the context of today's conversation, the theme being Pluto, does that sound interesting to you? Do you feel like there's some value for you guys over there that you'll get? My interest is psychology and EA. Yes, fantastic. You will definitely benefit from that. Elaine, State of Awakening. That's good to hear. Always. Yeah, they're hilariously honest. You're right, Amy. That is so true. That's cool. Okay. Just waiting, just seeing if there's some more peeps that will tag along. Feel free to share the stream with those that you think are going to benefit from it. Hi from Berlin. Welcome, welcome. Pluto's in the 7th house with the sun on the polarity point. Pluto conjunct the sun in Leo. X-ray vision. Pamela, you were saying that interesting today, Pluto is about to transit your 10th house at the same time. Oof. That's a good transit if you want to get your life in order, that's for sure. Okay. Well, I've put together just a few slides that will help us navigate today's conversation, today's sharing. So what I would like to do is just introduce a relationship to Pluto, like what does it symbolize, and so on. And then what we'll do is we'll go to some questions, and we'll spend some time just kind of hanging out and answering questions that are related to our Pluto placements. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go. I'm going to go straight to the theme of Pluto. Unwanted power struggles. Yep, that can definitely happen with the Pluto Scorpio generation, Monique. Okay, so let's begin with something super simple and yet opening up not something simple. And the question is, what is Pluto in our chart? Right? What is the Pluto placement? In fact, I'm pretty sure that that's not the first slide in my deck over here. Let's have a look. Yeah, okay. Apparently it is. Okay, so what is Pluto in our charts? It's a fairly simple concept to grasp, but living the experience is definitely challenging. That's for sure. So from evolutionary astrology's point of view, especially from the teachings of Jeffrey Wolf Green, Pluto represents the deepest nature of our desires. Okay, when I say the word deepest, what I mean by that is this is the part of us where let me put it this way. We have emotions, right? We know that we have these emotions, and when our emotions are present in our world and we can see our attachments and connections to our world and to the people, to our work, etc., we form these emotional attachments, right? We form emotional attachments, and these emotional attachments allow us to experience our relationship with the world, okay? Pluto represents not just the superficial connection on the top, it represents the deepest connections that we have, the ones that are the strongest, the ones that reveal where our vulnerabilities are. And it reveals to us the nature of our desire. Okay? The emotional part of us is what allows us to feel that we are alive, that we're present, and we're experiencing things. Okay? So we can experience something that makes us happy. We can experience something that makes us feel sad. And we have this spectrum of emotions, right? Feelings and emotions. So Pluto in our charts, firstly, is telling us here's where the deepest desire exists for the soul, and it exposes the emotional attachment that is associated with that desire. Okay? So it's step one, it's revealing to us where the deepest desire exists for us as for our human experience, like our human journey. Every single one of us has an emotional arc that we're living through in this lifetime. Okay? That emotional arc is driven by a subconscious drive or desire, and that is driving our attachments towards a specific direction. Okay? The emotional spectrum allows us to see consciously what that unconscious desire is about. Okay? So it is the deepest unconscious desire that allows us to experience the arc of our human experience, our human story. Let's think about our lives as a story that is unfolding. Okay? Another way that you can drop into a connection with the Pluto experience is, how many are familiar with and have watched a TV series? Like just think of any TV series that you've watched recently, okay? From season 1 all the way to season 3, etc. Okay, so are you thinking about that TV show that you've just recently watched, the TV series? Okay, now one that you finished as well, right? Your ability to track the overall arc of what that TV show or TV series is about is the same as Pluto. Okay, there's like a plot line that runs through the middle of that TV show that allows us to follow it. Okay, that core central theme. That's the same as Pluto. Pluto is the core central theme that is running through your life, that when you're 3 years old, 0 when you're born, when you're 7, when you're 12, when you're 25, when you're 30, when you're 60, when you're 50, there is going to be a central theme that might feel differently at times, but is present throughout your entire life. That's what Pluto is in our chart. Okay, that's what Pluto is in our chart. So it represents the core central theme that we are, you and me, are emotionally experiencing and becoming conscious of. Right? So by becoming conscious of, we're also unconscious to it. So the deepest desire nature becomes more and more revealed as we experience the growth of our arc, right? The growth of our emotional arc, our story. And we see that central theme consistently unfold over our lives, right? Over time. So then the next question is, if Pluto sits in the 5th house of your astrology chart, then for your entire life, there's going to be a core central theme around that astrological sign or archetype. Okay, it becomes the dominant story, the plot, the evolutionary intention that you have come to become conscious of in this lifetime, to witness, to be, yeah, I would say that, just to become conscious of, to become aware of. Okay, and it's just like a string. Like when I teach to my students, I teach Pluto as the red thread in the chart. Right, when you pull the red thread, all the stories come together, and then there's one central theme. And you can pretty much like extract that. That's why I like evolutionary astrology, because I'm interested in seeing the bottom line of my personal evolutionary arc. What's your personal evolutionary arc? And EA does a great job at being able to answer that question, because it looks at Pluto as that red thread, and you can actually like extract it. You can see that red thread in somebody's astrology chart. So that's what Pluto is in the chart. It is the core evolutionary intention, right? The central plot of your story. The answer to your life's question. And it's a commitment that you cannot escape and you cannot avoid, and you must embrace. So that experience of embracing is met oftentimes with a lot of resistance. And so that's where we can move on to the next slide. Why Pluto matters and our challenge, right? Why Pluto matters and our challenge. So Pluto matters because firstly, it's not going away, right? The core central theme is not going to go away. So as we go through our lives, we will be attracted, bonded to, and presented with a set of life challenges and circumstances and experiences that we're trying to emotionally and psychologically figure out. So it matters because the more that we can become conscious of these consistent and persistent themes that we seem to carry as our emotional arc, it's not easier, but it becomes more, you're able to not only contextualize, but you can also digest. And you're more able to find peace and emotional growth if we approach it, when we approach this theme in our lives with grace, right? If we approach it with a level of acceptance. So Pluto matters because this is the part of us where we can get deeply trapped in emotional grief. We can get deeply trapped in emotional suffering. We can get deeply trapped in life is too difficult for me and I'm just going to disassociate, right? These are natural human qualities that when we face something that challenges us in our lives, unless we have like people that we can like make sense of our experiences when they're Pluto related, it's often it's more easier to integrate. It's more easier to try to make sense and as I said, integrate, metabolize, right? Digest. But if we can't, these emotions become displaced, right? They become very sensitive trigger points that we will run away from or will try to repress, right? Push down. And a lot of Plutonian experiences, we actually just unconsciously push down anyway. So it's not even, it's not even something that you can wake up every single day and say, I'm not going to push these emotions down. That's a difficult task when it comes to Pluto. So the challenge with Pluto is not so much how can I fix what I'm experiencing? How can I fix my Pluto placement? It's how can I become more connected to the story that is unfolding? How can I become connected to the story that is unfolding? How can I become more emotionally aware of the unfolding story and what the emotional landscape that comes with the story is about? Okay. The challenge is accepting it with grace and being able to allow for those emotional patterns of intensity and struggle to strengthen us, which is the opposite of what you want to do when you have Pluto experiences. Like, don't get me wrong, even though I sit here and I share this with you here and I put it across that can maybe appear or sound like it's an easy thing, I don't think so. I think that a lot of Pluto experiences are really raw and extremely deep and painful and take many years to be able to fully comprehend and understand. But that pain or that disempowerment or that abduction that comes along with deep Pluto experiences, we benefit when we allow ourselves to be, when we embrace the challenge with openness, right? With curiosity, with why. Because there are actual layers of resources that naturally emerge out of a more healthy, graceful relationship towards our Pluto experiences. And I'll explain what I mean by that. But why Pluto matters and our challenge. Pluto matters because the story is not going away. You cannot avoid it. It will eventually show up in your life as a demand for your attention. So the personality, right? Our personality, like my personality, Simon, these are my certain patterns, psychological patterns. They are, just personality traits, ego structure, as it were, how I relate to the environment. Pluto is beyond that. Pluto is beyond the ego structure. So our natural relationship to our environment, we can disassociate from. We can pretend it's not there. We can, as I said, we can live a life of external influence and get distracted in the world by things that don't actually matter. But when Pluto shows up, it does require us and does often demand attention. And why it matters is because when that moment arises, it's very difficult to emotionally avoid it. So the challenge becomes embracing it with grace and being able to know that this is not something to fix rather than something to understand. Right? We're becoming more conscious of that Pluto story because that Pluto story is way bigger than just the moment that you're existing in, right? Just this moment that we're right now, or the 3 or 4 months where you're having a strong Pluto aspect to your moon sign or to your Mercury, etc. It's going to feel very intense. Like that period of time is when it's really heating up. But that story continues to echo in your life later on. And it's your entire life that is the question towards what is my Pluto placement about. It's not something you just figure out in one day and then it's like, okay, now I'm done. I understand my Pluto, get on with my life. It doesn't work like that. So the challenge is allowing yourself the grace to know that this is your story for your life, embracing it and meeting it with curiosity. And I would say that's what I would say. I would say grace. Okay. How do we deal with Pluto? So this kind of piggies back on what I'm talking about here. Like, how do we deal with Pluto? Well, the location or the placement of Pluto in our chart, or any Pluto transit that we're having, Okay, so any Pluto transit we're having, Pluto coming up to our 10th house cusp, Pluto arriving to a planet that we have in our chart. Pluto, from a more human psychological perspective, shows up as intensity, right? You're feeling a lot more than what you would usually feel. You're way more sensitive to the theme in your life. So if it's Pluto Mercury, like communication is going to become way more like prevalent in your attention, right? It's going to become more sensitive. You're going to notice it more. It becomes more of a focal point, and it stays there. It's present. It's like it's not going anywhere. And there's strong emotion. There's a strong emotional relationship to that theme. So if it's Pluto transiting your Venus as an example, relationships become a very strong emotional focal point for you. So that's the first thing. When we're dealing with Pluto in our chart, like how do we deal with Pluto in our chart? This is a transit. This is a period of our life where we are invited to first examine what fears are naturally showing up. Okay, Pluto, firstly, the way that it works is that it opens up, like the earth opens up and we're sucked into the underground, right? We're sucked into the underworld. The underworld can be a metaphor for our emotions, right? So the earth opens up and then we are brought into the underworld. We're brought into our emotions. It exposes what is beneath the surface. So once that abduction has taken place, once we're pulled into that space, there's like a period of disorientation. It's like, whoa, this is generally when the first part of the transit hits. There's a moment of disorientation. It's like, I'm in this space, there's lots of feelings, there's lots of emotions, my world is being turned upside down, and so on, right? Then there's a stage where you know that there's no going back to the surface. There's almost like a need to surrender. That surrendering piece is acceptance that where you are being taken to, where you're being brought to, needs to be examined and understood. It needs to be worked on. It needs to be consciously understood. So Pluto exposes these fears, these emotions. It brings it to the surface. You're now present with themes. And then what Pluto does is it reveals patterns that have become subconscious, right? That's why I believe that when you do have a very strong Pluto transit, it's a good idea to be in conversation with somebody, whether it be through a psychotherapist or a therapist or any person that's very close to you, that can allow you to objectify what it is that you're saying and maybe even mirror back what you're saying or what you're noticing, so that pattern can become more consciously made aware of within your life. And often that attachment, that pattern shows up as an attachment, right? An emotional attachment or an emotional position that you have on something, right? You might, oftentimes when Pluto transits come along, let's say Pluto transit the 7th house, right? You'll have a certain like pre attachment to how relationships are. And that will be driven by a deep subconscious pattern, Pluto, of how you operate within the context of relationships. Pluto will come along and will say, hey, it's time to review this and observe where some patterns are no longer empowering to you, where some attachments and the way that those attachments operate need to be reviewed, adjusted. And you might need to actually let go of certain ways of being, certain behaviorisms, certain psychological attachments, behaviorisms, attitudes, perspectives, beliefs that once held and once directed you and once defined how you operated in relationships. Pluto will say, it's time to review this at a very deep emotional level and excavate, right? Excavate, like bring to the surface, like pull it to the surface and release and change yourself. The release part is very important. So Pluto represents in our chart the core storyline, our deepest commitment to our most raw and authentic emotional reality. And we're here to become conscious of that desire story, of that plot line. Why it matters is because that plot line is not going to disappear because you want it to disappear. It's going to be consistent in your life. So it's better to approach it and recognize the challenge that comes with it, which is that it's not going to be easy. It does require a lot of time. And having curiosity and openness and grace towards whatever that deep, intense set of experiences are rewards you. Okay? How do we deal with it? We realize that there is a period of time through this curiosity and this openness and this grace that we need to be going through a process of acceptance, a process of uncomfortability, and then whatever shows up to the surface, we're letting go of, right? We're allowing ourselves to say, this no longer is the truth for me. This is no longer where the emotional truth is for me. And so I'm ready to let go of that. And the process of letting go can be incredibly painful if you're somebody that doesn't want to let go, right? Because it feels familiar, it feels safe, it feels secure. So part of Pluto's challenge is the realization that it's the deepest unconscious emotional securities that we hold that we will try to reinforce at all costs and still lose, because Pluto will say it's not about what you want, it's about what your evolutionary pattern is about. Right? Pluto challenges us deeply because it asks us this profound question. It says, I know that you don't know where this plot line is going, but I need you to trust me. I know you don't know where this plot line is going, but I need you to trust me. That's the threshold and the question that we have to answer when we get to the threshold of surrender and letting go and being able to have the open space in our life to connect, to attach and form new bonds and new attachments to new experiences, new ways of being. So Pluto is that process of arriving to a point in which things have died and then realizing that in order to move forward, there needs to be an incredible amount of trust within yourself to accept that you don't know what the future plot line is about. But whatever that future plot line is, Pluto will take us in that direction and will present us with new attachments, new possibilities, new experiences that we'll form emotional bonds with that will eventually look like a complete metamorphosis. That's why Pluto experiences are strongly associated with the phenomena of metamorphosis. Because it's a change, it's an emotional rebirth that comes from a collapse of an old, outdated identity that no longer is the emotional truth. So I think I'll pause here before I go to Pluto and the nodes for a second. And I'll do this. I'll put this image on the screen. So there's a point where the caterpillar, which represents the pre-existing state of our emotional, psychological attachments to things, right? The context, the current way that you're living your life, and some of the emotional dilemmas that you face. Okay, the struggles that you might feel, the limitations you experience, the wounds that you carry, right? The caterpillar represents the current context. And then as we go through a Pluto transit, Pluto starts to bring us into, first the abduction takes place, where we're brought into the underworld. We're brought into the deeper layers of our emotions that for the most part we would put away, right? We want to push away from our immediate field of awareness because they're uncomfortable or they're not fun. By the way, the opposite is also true, right? You don't want to consistently be in the underworld all the time. Like that's not a place that is healthy too, right? It's a process of going into, or like allowing yourself to go into the underworld and become comfortable with those experiences and then re-emerge to the surface, right? And then it's brought down into the thing. It's like the ability to be able to have the resilience to know that when those abductions or those pulling, that's going into the underworld, it's a natural part of our lives, and then we come back to the surface, right? And it's a natural part of our lives, like an ebb and flow. So when we do go down into a state of deep internal emotional reflection and emotional digestion, the caterpillar starts to turn itself into the cocoon. And eventually in the cocoon, it actually dissolves itself completely. Right? That process of, like, there's the caterpillar, step 1, the caterpillar turning into the cocoon, step 2 and 3, the butterfly emerging, step 4, the butterfly flying, step 5, right? Step 2 and 3 is the process when we are in that emotional depth and we are exploring and becoming conscious of what our emotional plot line is about. And as you can see there, once we're in that cocoon, we're completely wrapped in the storyline. And then that's where that question that I talked about earlier exists. That intersection between, I know that you don't know what you're becoming or what you're morphing into or what new forms of attachments are a part of your life, because right now the only thing that you can see is the collapse and the decay and the dissolving of the old. So once we answer to life from what is this new space, and it naturally arises, by the way, like that's the thing, and that's the thing that I often try to encourage and imagine, not only to my own life but to all of us, is that Pluto, while we're in that state of the cocoon, it actually, we are forced emotionally and psychologically to look for solutions and salvation. We're forced to have to figure out what to do next. And it's that natural state of being forced to know, like, how do I resolve this? What is this about? It's not going anywhere. I need to address it. It's there that we start to then explore and discover resources that, when they do actually commit and they do actually fit for what it is that we need to do to transform, they become lifetime resources that are empowering to us. So the story of somebody that discovers a psychotherapist, for instance, that helps them get through a deep emotional experience of Plutonian level, and they gain resources because that person represents a resource to the person that's going through the Pluto transit. And they discover things, right? The psychotherapist provides certain resources, certain ways of thinking, etc. And so there are new opportunities that we didn't know were available to us because we weren't pressured to look for them. So our lives don't change, we don't innovate, because when we're staying in that level of comfortableness, right, and comfortability, there's nothing that's pushing us to expand and grow beyond what we have, right? It's just natural for us to not do that. So Pluto, in its process, psychologically, through the collapsing, it pushes us to go to seek salvation. It pushes us to seek something that we will ultimately form an attachment to, that becomes a desire for that we become empowered by it. And so we gain tremendous value, tremendous, as I said, resources, something that's empowering for us that, you know, later on in your life, if you're talking to somebody that's in their 20s, as an example, and you're in your 60s, you can often you can connect back to that earlier, say 45 Pluto transit that you're having, and know that you overcame that, right? You evolved through it. It becomes a storyline. It becomes something that's a part of you. It's very deep and very real and very raw. It becomes something that is a representation of your truth beyond the everyday routines that we need to do to maintain our level of sort of surface level existence. Pluto experiences sit in the depth of our heart. And so when we share that with other human beings, and we talk about that rawness, that level of intensity, those deep feelings, it shows our humanness, right? It brings us into what's really real. And so let's go to this picture over here. It brings us into what's really real. And ultimately that butterfly becomes the new direction. It becomes the possibility, right? And the butterfly did not know that it was going to, the caterpillar did not know that it was going to be turning into a butterfly, right? That's the interesting thing about this whole entire process, that a phenomena in nature, it's not even something that's, just exclusive to human beings. The process of metamorphosis is inherent within nature. So Pluto exists beyond our state of humanness. Okay. So we'll talk about Pluto and the nodes here quickly. So this is the last slide in this little conversation that I'm having with you guys. So Pluto and the nodes, what is it? Well, Pluto itself, because of its nature and what it represents, especially from EA, Pluto needs a container, right? It needs a container in order for the nature of the desire to be fulfilled, in order for the nature of the desire to be able to actualize itself. Okay, so again, let's go to the analogy of watching a TV series. Every chapter or every episode has got certain actors in it that over 6 or 7 episodes, those actors have performed and have played out the plot line. Right? If you notice that, if you really look at like a TV show, right? When you start the TV show at episode 1, you don't really know much. You're kind of discovering Aries. But by the time you get to episode 8, these actors have performed and behaved and have acted out the essence of the story, the writing, right? The writer that has written the story, they perform it and we get to emotionally connect with it. And that's how we then can walk away from the end of the episode or the season and say, wow, season 1 was about. So think of the nodes as the environment and the actors that show up that personify the writing of the season, right? The plot line, the purpose of it. They act it out, and our ability to be able to then relate to the actors allows us to experience what the essence of, say, the TV show was about, right? The TV series was about. So that's the same thing. Pluto and the nodes in your astrology chart allows us to see, okay, the location of Pluto in your chart, let's say, for instance, in the 5th house, right? That core storyline is the underlying empowerment path, the underlying need to become aware of your sense of purpose, your sense of destiny, right? There's something meaningful that you want to do with your life. And you want to actualize that. So the path of actualization is filled with commitments and loss and betrayal and deep emotional hurt, right? That's that 5th house story. But your south node could sit in the 7th house and your north node sits in the 1st house. You can take another person that also has Pluto in the 5th house, because I'm sure there's many of you in this chat over here that have got Pluto in the 5th house. But the other person has got Pluto south node in the 10th, north node in the 4th. Same Pluto placement, different nodes, different context. The plot line for the most part, will still be very similar. Both of you will have the sensitivity and the desire to work through self-actualization, but one will have it through the conditioning of the 10th house, right? Career, purpose through career. Whereas somebody with Pluto, with Saturn in the 7th, his relationships become an area in which that Pluto expresses itself. Does it make sense? So the fundamental kind of teaching of EA is Pluto and its nodes, because Pluto and the nodes reveal the metaphysics of your life. The metaphysics of your life, right? The story that's beyond the surface. The one that's in the deeper part of you, that your close friends and relatives, etc., those are the ones that really get to see that story, right? That is what's driving you. That is what your story arc is about. That's how it's defined. So Pluto in the nodes provides the context, and you can see that in the charts, and you can see that, and when you look at Pluto in the nodes and you synthesize it, you can see the red thread that's happening as well. It's pretty profound. Okay, so I'm going to end there with my Pluto conversation today. I know that was a lot to digest and take in, but I'll summarize. Pluto in our chart represents our core commitment to life on an emotional level. It's where we will be challenged the deepest and where we will have the deepest emotional growth. The way that we handle it is by curiosity and openness and patience. The realization that this is nothing to fix, but something to become conscious and aware of, and enjoy what we are presented. Not only, when I say enjoy, I don't mean just like it's happiness, right? Because most Pluto transits don't feel like that. They are very empowering. Some of them are filled with extreme pain. That's the human experience. How we approach it and how we deal with it is that it happens in stages, and every single one of us has an evolutionary arc that is meant to be evolved. So we will start out as the caterpillar in this lifetime, and eventually life will present scenarios and circumstances that will bring you into the where is it now? The chrysalis phase, right? Where the caterpillar dissolves completely. And then there is the moment of presentation where we're ready to expand into and grow into the butterfly phase, right? Something new. So a process of death and a process of renewal. Okay. Does that land with you guys in the chat? Are you following what I'm saying there? Shubi, do you use the Pluto polarity point? Yes, absolutely. And I'll happily explain that. In fact, if I have a pen and paper here, I could write that down because that's a great question. Polarity point. Okay, that's good. I'm glad to see that this conversation was landing with you guys, or understanding Pluto. Again, I mean, many of you that have been following me for a long period of time will know that, you know, way back like 13, 12 years ago, I did a bunch of Pluto videos through the houses. And so Pluto has been a very big part of Raising Vibrations' sort of story and how we've expressed and how we've connected to our own personal lives, etc. The volume should be good. Oh, right. Okay, so let's talk about Pluto polarity point. So in evolutionary astrology, there is a concept called, sorry, the volume is low. I How is that? Is that true? Lynn says that she's experiencing low volume from me over here. Is that true, guys? As in, like, is everybody else feeling the low volume? Volume's good? Okay, sweet. Thanks very much for letting me know. Yes, very low. Okay. Let's try that. Good for me using earphones. All right, I've made a few adjustments over here. Okay. All right. So who was it that asked the question on Pluto polarity point? Do you use? Right. Shubi. So I really think that the concept of the Pluto polarity point is fantastic, and it's super useful. And I actually, in the Evolutionary Astrology immersion, I specifically teach the 12 archetypes from the point of view that the Aries sign and the Libra sign are interchangeable. They don't operate independently. Aries is not Aries without Libra. Libra is not Libra without Aries, right? So the archetypes require polarities in order for them to exist. So the polarity point is a very important concept when working with your chart from an emotional and psychological perspective of integration, like integrating your experiences, trying to make sense of them, comprehending them, not being possessed by the drives of the Pluto experience and then just going like, yeah, this is just my life. And for many ways it is, but you can either understand it better and deeply connect to it better and make sense of it, or it can just be something that you can be emotionally trapped with. Okay, so yeah, thanks very much, Michelle. It was fun to have you in the course. We learned loads about Libra, didn't we? Okay, so polarity point. In EA, the concept of the polarity point is simple in the sense that in order to understand the evolutionary path of your soul, you must integrate the sign that's in the opposite side of your Pluto. So if your Pluto is in the 5th house, then the 11th house of the astrology chart is a very important theme that must be integrated into the 5th house in order to create balance, right? In order to create balance. So Pluto 5th house souls are here to experience their sense of self-validation, self-recognition, right? To learn to take up space in a way that is purposeful and meaningful for themselves, right? To say, this is what I want, this is the things I want to achieve in my life, this is the things that matter to me, these are the things that I see as my destiny. You want to do that, right? And you want to follow something like that and experience what that's about. And the 11th house says, remember that other people, you share the space with other people. So when you're interacting with the world, remember that other people also have their own 5th house energy. So it's a balance between objectivity and subjectivity. That's the concept here. It's just that the opposite sign balances this Pluto placement, and you're evolving to integrating the opposite side, right? So wherever your Pluto sits in your chart, the opposite side is learning to be integrated. However, there is an exception to this rule. Yes, that's right, Anna Marie. You've got a 10th house Pluto, you're looking to your 4th house. So the 10th house souls are looking to integrate more emotional connection to themselves and to their wider community. And then it balances that 10th house attachment, right? So, however, there is an exception. If your Pluto and your North Node are next to each other like that, okay, then you don't actually have a polarity point. Then you do not have a polarity point. If your Pluto and your North Node are right next to each other like that, whether it doesn't matter which side it is, and within about a 10-degree difference, so if Pluto is at 1 and your North Node is at 11, or if your North Node is at 21 or something, then you have Pluto conjunct the North Node. and then you do not have a polarity point. Okay. And I think that that's pretty self-explanatory, because the North Node and Pluto are together. It implies that the soul has already begun the journey. And so you're continuing to keep experiencing and working on that Pluto placement solely, right? There's no need to integrate that South Node, that polarity point, because your South Node is already there. It's already like, hey, I'm coming from the integration point and I need to do more of the Pluto placement. Okay. All right. So yes, Pluto polarity point is important, and it is essential to understanding how to actually integrate Pluto experiences. Okay, let's see. Yeah, Lady Rebecca, why don't I use true sidereal astrology? It changes psychology 100%. I 100% believe you, and I know that if you looked at the chart from that perspective, you'd gain tremendous value and insight. For me, I choose to use the terrestrial chart. So looking at the signs based on the meridian. So 30 degrees from the meridian, and then 30 degrees until you map the entire geodetic chart of the Earth, not using the extraterrestrial, which is the stars outside of the Earth. So it's just different ways of looking at the astrology. I think that both systems can provide incredible value. It just depends on what it is that you're looking for. Okay. Is there any difference from then to now that you've grown into, James? That's what you're asking me? Is that about my Pluto placement? Let me just make sure that I understand your question correctly. Is there any differences from then to now that you've grown into for my Pluto placement? Is that what you were asking? All right, lots and lots of questions are coming through, peeps. So just give me a second while I try to order all of it. You mentioned 13 years ago when you first made the... Oh, yeah, 100%. I definitely understand Pluto way better, way more intimately. I still think that what I talked about in those videos are 100% relevant, and a lot of people still give me feedback on how it has helped them understand their Pluto. I think what's changed for me is I have not only gone through my own Pluto square in my chart, and I've watched other people, including my partner, go through her Pluto square and Pluto transits, that I've become more understanding of the theory behind it, right? What's the emotional journey behind the Pluto experience? In fact, that's the 3 months coaching program that I work with. I have a program called the Metamorphosis Journey that I take people on for 3 months, and it's pretty much dedicated to uncovering and understanding your Pluto for those 3 months. So, and in those 3 months, the entire thing is structured based on my understanding of Pluto over the 13 years. So, yeah. But that was a great question. I really liked it because it gave me an opportunity to reflect on what I have absolutely seen deep change and deeper connection to the Pluto experience. Pluto square is developing. Yeah, Scorpio Aquarius. That is true. Okay. All right. Let me just see if I can go back to no polarity points. I mean, all right, Elaine, you were saying I never knew that 10th house Pluto conjunct North Node is opposite 4th house. So, Elaine, do you have Pluto in your 10th house, and your North Node is conjunct your Pluto, right? So your Pluto and your North Node are in the 10th house. Is that right? Because if that's true, then yes, you do not have a polarity point. And that literally implies that, and that's the cool thing about, if you have Pluto and the North Node connected, the way that it emotionally and psychologically looks in your life is that you, it means that you don't actually recognize that when you go through an empowering Pluto experience, you're like, oh, I'm just doing the thing that I feel I'm attracted and desired towards doing, right? I'm just doing that. I'm just moving towards it. But you don't realize with Pluto North Node conjunction that you're actually continuously walking that Pluto story and that Pluto line, and thinking that you're never getting anywhere, right? It's like you're like doing all these things. You're like, oh, I'm still need to empower myself. Like I'm still looking for that empowerment. So for any of you that are got Pluto conjunct the North Node and you think that you're not like, if you think that you're not kind of like, I don't know, empowering yourself, or you've still got more things to empower, etc., that's exactly how that phenomena works. It's just like you're just continuously just merging and attaching to new things that represent empowerment to you, and you just gain all these resources. So yeah, it is absolutely organic for Elaine and whoever else. Is Pluto conjunct the South Node the same? No. So that's a good question, Shrubi. So when Pluto is conjunct the South Node, there is a polarity point, and there is what's the word? There is an exception, again, to the rule with Pluto conjunct the South Node. So it's going to depend like this. You have to look at the degree of your Pluto placement. Okay. If the South Node is ahead of Pluto, so if Pluto's let's say Pluto's at 5 degrees, and your South Node sits at 8 or 6 or 7, if it sits like further than that, so 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like that, if it's like that, then you are in a lifetime where the soul, Pluto, has come to confront prior life dynamics, right? Pre-existing experiences, psychological attachments, like confront them, and they're very much connected to the immediacy of your environment. Like this is an elimination cycle in this lifetime. So don't be surprised if you have to let go of a lot of things in this lifetime, a lot of attachments, a lot of deep psychological loss that takes place with Pluto conjunct the South Node in a balsamic phase. If Pluto is ahead, if the South Node is ahead, so if Pluto is at 5 and the South Node is at 4, 3, 2, 1, like that, then that implies that the soul has come into this lifetime and has just literally experienced the elimination of the past, and is now beginning to experience the beginning phases of a new evolutionary cycle, right? So depending on the location of the South Node will dictate where you are in the context of this Pluto story. And if the South Node is approaching the Pluto, then you're in the lifetime where it's the most intense. A lot of things will feel like very deja vu kind, like you're in this environment. There's a lot of patterns that you're eliminating and get rid of. Whereas if Pluto, the South Node is moving away from Pluto, that story has concluded and you're now dealing with the after effects. And it oftentimes is very strong emotional memory with a place that you're not living in right now. Like what I've seen a lot is with people with Pluto, where Pluto and the South Node with the South Node moving away, they'll be like they're born in a certain place, and then that place is not where they actually grew up, or there's different culture association, different family dynamics, there's a split up. Anything that mirrors your immediate environment and where you are right now are not the same place. Yes, thank you very, very much. For those of you that actually would like to inquire to work with me at a deeper level when it comes to your Pluto placement in your chart, Jen's popped an intake form over there that you can fill out, and we can chat about whether or not it actually is a good fit for us, and if I can genuinely help you to understand your Pluto placement. So any one of you that are interested in wanting to go deeper into their Pluto and to be able to let me help you understand it better and work with it more consciously, I would love to have the opportunity to work with you. Let's see if that's a fit. You just follow the intake and book a call with me. Okay. Let's see. I know there's lots of other questions that peeps have written here, so I'm just going to go back and do that. All right. Just looking at the chat to see if I've got some questions for myself and my daughter. Okay. Somebody asked, so my Pluto's in the 11th. Should I concentrate in the 5th house where my North Node is? That's right, Lynn. Exactly. And I remember talking to you through, I think it was the immersion, that the Pluto 5th house, if you have an 11th house Pluto placement, the core evolutionary thread is to move towards creative self-expression. Okay? The thread, the core question is, am I expressing myself? Am I showing up and saying and validating what's important to me? Am I allowing myself to be seen? In fact, this is a great little segue, and I hope that it's okay to take you guys a little bit over here. We should stay in that class permanently. I know it's loads of fun to be able to share EA with you guys. Okay, so when you look at your astrology chart, right, and particularly because we're focusing on Pluto, I've talked about Pluto as the core like storyline, the plot line, right? And I've introduced the way to look at it that if you need to look at the opposite side of your Pluto placement so that you can balance the energy of your natal Pluto. So in Lynn's case, she's got Pluto in the 11th house. Like, for her to balance out that 11th house energy, she needs to go over to the 5th house and say, hey, 5th house, what are you here to teach me? And the 5th house says, do you stand up for yourself? Do you follow your creativity? Do you express your interests and validate the things that matter to you? Do you live in a way where you speak up for things, right? And if you answer that question, yeah, I'm learning to do that more, then you're successfully doing your Pluto polarity point, right? You're learning to experience and gain understanding from that opposite sign, okay? So that's how you can practically take away from it. It's like you're going over to the other side and you're saying, what is it that I need to learn to be able to balance my current Pluto placement? Okay, so it kind of like integrates. You take some of that polarity point energy and you bring it back. The analogy I use in the school is like, it's like you're carrying a bucket of water. So you're going all the way to the polarity point, gathering some water, and then you're bringing it back to your house. And then you're digesting it, and then you go back out again. You gather that water, and then you come back and you digest it, right? And there's more to know, is that your entire astrology chart has a karmic signature in it. Right? They're not just individual patterns that are just there randomly. There's stories and subtle experiences that are embedded into the arc of your life. So that polarity point and that Pluto tells you how to approach these stories at the deepest level. Right? So it's not just about like, oh, I have Pluto in the 11th house and it's about friendships. It's, well, you could have the South Node conjunct Saturn in Aquarius in your 9th house. You could have South Node conjunct Saturn in the 9th house of the astrology chart in the sign of Aquarius. Now that adds an extra layer, that adds a specific storyline to you. That storyline is the soul is prior to this life attempting to throw off Aquarius, all underlying belief systems that it has used to make sense of the world. It's saying, I no longer want to follow a set of laws or institutions or authorities that tell me what to think. Pluto, Saturn, 9th house, Sagittarius, 9th house, and the South Node. And in the sign of Aquarius, it's like I'm learning to say no. Okay? Now, where the Pluto placement comes in, it's like that thing that I just described, that Saturn South Node conjunction in the 9th house Aquarius, that Pluto placement in the 11th says, yeah, the underlying desire is to throw off all psychological and emotional attachments relative to these belief systems, right? You're learning through that Pluto 11th house placement to actually decentralize, to throw it off, to say no longer. And part of your evolutionary intention, as in the polarity point, is to emotionally embrace being comfortable and learning how to say, I don't actually want to follow these belief systems. Self-validation, self-verification, Pluto 5th, the polarity point being the 5th. So the Pluto arc allows for the activation of the rest of the chart to actually come alive. It powers it. So if you're somebody, like, this is the two parallels that would run together, right? The first parallel is like this. Let's say you're not actualizing your polarity point. what this type of signature could look like with South Node conjunct Saturn in the 9th house Aquarius is, here's a person who has this desire to want to throw off any conditioning that is related to a set of belief systems, right? A set of cosmologies, right? A religion, let's just say a religion, okay? A truth. This soul wants to do that. But if they're not actualizing that 5th house, their Pluto placement could be like they're just in a group where everybody's like following this religious idea and they don't agree with it, but they don't speak up, right? They kind of mask, they become detached. They don't actually involve themselves in their own story. And so they experience the suffering and the pain and the detachment of feeling trapped. Now, on the polarity side, as in like the other side that's running congruent with it, here's a soul that actualizes their polarity point. They actually stand up and they go like, you know what, I think that this is fantastic for all of you guys. This is a great way for you to find meaning in the world, but this is not for me. I need to go and search for a new way to live. That's what the polarity point does. It activates the essence of the karma. It allows you to engage in a completely new path, which allows then the creative expression of the soul's journey. Does this make sense? It's pretty neat. Like I don't know, maybe this is normal for all of you guys to understand it, but that's how that works. Individuation, you're right. Okay. Does Pluto polarity point rule apply when we're through transits for the major focus in the house, Pluto through transits only? That's a great question. So if you, the polarity point absolutely applies. So if you're having Pluto transit your 12th house as an example, the underlying life change will be a sort of like progressive decay and then a drifting away. And that Virgo polarity point, that 6th house, says if you drift away, like if you don't action that 6th house of daily routine to stay just present with what's going in your life, that you will easily just kind of get lost at sea. So yeah, the polarity points through transits do apply. They're more like integration points, right? So yeah, I don't have to explain it. I want to do something here quick, peeps. Okay. Does the sun on the polarity point have specific significance, or any other place, any other planets in the point? Yes, there is significance. If there is a planet that is on the polarity point, you can pretty much know that that planet is an extra layer of importance. So whatever that planet is, that's the archetype that the soul is also integrating in this lifetime. It's not just about that house, it's about that house and that sign. So if it's the moon, there's an extra emphasis on emotional understanding and self definition, right? If it's the sun, then the soul is experiencing a deep emotional transformation around self-expression. And the way that they'll experience it is through other people, right? Other people are self-actualizing. Other people are doing the thing that I desire. Other people are achieving that. Why can't I do that? And it's meant to trigger you to eventually get to a point of realizing that you don't see it in yourself. So that's why you don't literally actualize yourself, because you're always looking at other people's actualizations because you're feeling the emptiness within yourself. Allegory. The wolf has said, "Hi Simon, you've done well." Wicked. Okay. Is like what the class is going to be, Lorraine? I'm not sure I understand. Maybe you wrote somewhere earlier. Let me see. You did right there. South node is at 9 degrees away from natal moon and Pluto. Okay, let's see if I can answer that question. The south node is 9 degrees away from my natal moon and Pluto. Okay, so your natal Pluto and moon is in Virgo. and it's in the 8th house. So focus on the 2nd house. That would be correct. Yes, the 2nd house becomes a point of integration. So the 8th house has to do with deep. It's Pluto and the 8th house are essentially the same phenomena, right? It's where we are brought into the deeper layers of our emotional world. We are challenged to overcome our fears. We are confronted by limitations that we have within ourselves that we're asked to grow from. And so the polarity point says we're digging deep within ourselves to find what resources we have, what value we can actually attain from what we attach to, and how can we become stronger, right? How can we become stronger as we merge with things that we perceive as valuable? Do you guys see that? Hi, Simon. It's Tara B. Hey, Tara. Okay. So Pluto in the 8th house of the archetype, another way to understand Pluto experiences, and maybe even answers the question or asks the question about this one, which is how we deal with our Pluto. Well, the way that we deal with it as well is that Pluto exposes where we have subconscious fears, where we have underlying attachments, and it prompts us to then go and search for those resources and dig deep and to confront where those limitations are. And then we're asked to observe what represents empowerment to us, and then we merge with that. And then as we merge with that, we become connected to it, and then we extract the value from the thing that we merge with, right? And then that becomes integrated within us. And now that cannot be taken away, right? You can't take away that which you have merged with. So Pluto teaches us that sometimes we can feel a threat, right? The job security as an example, right? That it's threatening our relationship to the attachment to that security. And oftentimes we can identify our power with that security rather than what we have gained and what we've grown and what we've learned through the experience of being attached to that job. So that's what Pluto does. It asks us to see the value and the resources that we have internalized that cannot actually be taken away, right? And then we bring that competence and that value to the next thing that we engage within. Okay. So there is a combination to my 4th house polarity point and my transiting Pluto conjunct the South node in the 3rd house. It makes me look at the 9th house. That's right, Anna Marie. So your Pluto polarity points is in the 4th. So emotional empowerment from your Pluto comes through exploring the underlying fears that you have in your emotions and the desire to want to keep everything controlled, right? 4th house is about learning to become emotionally resilient. And Pluto conjunct your South node in the 3rd house. Yes, you want to look at your 9th house. Your North node is in the 9th house. So secure in your emotional truth. Hof Wim Hof. Is that another way of saying Wim Hof? My Pluto's in the 12th house Libra, 9 degrees away from the ascendant Scorpio. What do I focus on? That is a fantastic question for somebody with 12th house Pluto, because the thing is, there every Pluto placement apart from the 12th house doesn't have an inherent consistent identity to be attached to and focus on. It's like it comes in waves, right? So what you really focus on is more of what arises when you are in the state of stillness. So the Pluto 12th house placement essentially can attach to all of the other 11 houses. So you can experience the desire of all of the other 11 houses throughout your lifetime, because the evolutionary intention of the soul with Pluto in the 12th is to completely dissolve all prior life attachments. So it goes through recycling through old patterns and then experiencing the connection, the process of dissolving, and then the letting go, and then back to stillness. So it's stillness, nothing's happening, I'm bored, nothing's happening in my life, oh my God, something's happening, I'm getting attached to things, something coming to my life, I'm riding that wave, this is meaning, this is purpose, I'm feeling alive, and it's dying, it's dead, and I'm letting go, and now I'm back to stillness again. It's in the stillness that you want to focus on, because the soul or the Pluto experience will bring you patterns of movement when you're able to recognize when the wave is swelling again. So for you being in Libra, this has a lot to do with the decay of cultural patterns of balance and equality and fairness in relationship dynamics. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what Pluto is. You didn't ask for it, but you did say yes to all of this. Okay, I've got a 0 degrees Pluto in Sag. I'm curious about the polarity effects, the angle points, or rather perspective shift from angles point of view. Oof. That is a good question. Pluto's at 0 degrees, ascendant 3 degrees. Okay, so 0 degrees ascendant, 3 degrees Pluto in Sag, right? So your Pluto's in your first house, James, is that right? No, I'm also slightly dyslexic in my reading here, so. Perfect. So I would firstly say that because Pluto is literally on your ascendant and it's right in that first house, the dominant energy there is some purpose, some destination, some truth that or some direction that I need to go. I don't know what it's about or where I'm supposed to go. I just know that I have to follow my instincts. So my advice to anybody that's got Pluto first house is that you are literally here to follow your instincts and to be more conscious of what you gain from following your instincts rather than what the end result is about. Because when Pluto is in the first house, it's an emotional desire to experience new things completely fresh. So it's literally like that. So you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to try this astrology out. And then you go and discover it and you realize, it's not for me. And then you just abandon it, right? And then you go and try something else out. And you can sway from academic education all the way to like mystic occult things, all the way to like rock climbing. It's like there's no pattern of consistency with Pluto 12th house, 10th house, first house experiences, because the energy is not to experience consistent attachments. It's here to experience what it means to discover myself as I follow my instincts in all new scenarios and circumstances and situations, right? So that Sag rising says, I need to have the perspective of total freedom to roam in my world without limitations so that I can know my true purpose. Does that make sense? Does that like land with you? Wicked. I love the capital yes. It's the permission. The Sagittarius rising is the permission, because I know for a fact that if somebody put you into a like a container, like a pattern, an order, a routine, unless you have like 300 million planets in Capricorn, you cannot be caged. You need absolute freedom to be yourself, to explore yourself, to be as authentic as possible, even at the risk of disappointing or ending relationships, etc. Okay. How long have we been jamming for? 1 hour and 23 minutes? Okay. Now, Nancy, sorry that you're late. It's on record for us. Okay. Where is it? Okay, it is that. Absolutely. I will definitely do that. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Evolutionary Astrology immersion, because we're going to be closing it up soon. We're going to start on the 2nd of September. I just wanted to talk about that for a second, and then I'll continue to keep talking about other stuff, Pluto related. And by the way, for those of you, I appreciate that, James, 100%. And I'm glad that you got value from that. I appreciate that. Some of you that have done the immersion, by the way, I encourage you to, we've got we're offering an alumni discount if you want to do it again with me. That would be super amazing to journey with you guys again. I've done a few adjustments and changes to it. Okay. There is a kid outside that's screaming. Right. Just bear with me for a second, peeps. I'm just, there I am. Okay. I'll do this instead. It's taking too much time. All right. So we're gonna I think, Jen, if you're there, pop a link in. No, we're not ending. I just wanted to share a little bit about the immersion with those that are interested in wanting to learn about it or come join me in it. It is a 10-month program where I'm gonna basically take you guys through the exact curriculum that you get taught, like with Jeffrey Wolf Green. It's a 10-month process, and what I'm aiming to give to you value is an ability to be able to connect to your astrology chart through the entire curriculum of EA. So it's like basically sitting with me for 10 months and we are doing like astrological readings, right? You're going to learn about the Aries placement in your chart because we're going to go through the entire 12 signs. Then we're going to look at the Pluto and you're going to learn how to do that. And there's like movies we're going to watch. There's like a discussion on the Pluto placement. Then you're going to learn about the South nodes. Then you're going to learn about transits, how to interpret solar returns, exceptions to the rules, like what happens when the planets are squaring the nodes. How do you understand retrogrades? How do you understand transits? All the aspects, all the phases. So it's an entire like curriculum of how to understand your chart from a very like storyline basis. So what's the story that's in your chart rather than you're trying to figure out what different aspects mean. It's like you're going to go through the whole thing. So yeah, if you're serious about wanting to understand your astrology and you really want to be able to know how to understand your natal chart as well, and you want to be part of a community of other people and you want to experience it in a way that's not just about like learning facts, but actually engaging in your chart and asking me questions and letting me kind of guide you to connect with what it feels like to feel your chart, right? Then that's what this is going to be about. So yeah, I would love to have the opportunity to like, yeah, tutor any of you guys that are connected to your astrology and want to learn it more. It's my passion project. I love the immersion. It's something that I want to contribute to the astrological community. Will it help me read others' charts? Absolutely, Lorraine, 100%. There's the last, like part of the last module is how to actually have a astrological reading. It's how to counsel. It's called guidance skills and counseling. So yes. Yeah, that's right. Hey, Kara. And there's a lot of things in there that you don't get taught about it. Like, for instance, many of us, we run something in I call it complexes, which is that in our astrology chart, we identify with personality traits that are connected to our chart and to our signs. So a lot of people with very dominant Libra energy, right? For those of you that have got like dominant Libra energy, you'll grow up in a home where either there was somebody that was way bigger than you, and in terms of personality, in terms of presence, in terms of their energy, and your Libra responded to it in a way where it was like, okay, that person's taking up space, so I need to balance that by counteracting. And so you learn to not take up space. You learn to, yeah, exactly that, like compromise. So we get stuck in the complex of Libra, which is, it's easier for me to hide and to stay small than to actually take up space. So we're trapped in that complex, and you spend your whole entire life just running that emotional pattern. And you can look at your charts and you can look at your astrology and be like, yeah, okay, I figure this out. I figure that out. I know what this aspect means, but you still get stuck in that. You still don't actually hit the actual purpose of whatever those Libra planets were. So in order to understand Libra, you must understand Aries, right? And to emotionally empower yourself with Libra planets, you need to know that your experience is about looking across that Libra energy, looking at the Aries and saying, I'm going to take up space. I'm here to learn how to take space. That's what Libra is about. In order to balance the complex in Libra, you need to learn to take up space. And when you take up space, you find yourself actually having stronger boundaries and stronger self-definition. So when you show up in relationships, you can bring yourself and your space to the relationship, which naturally creates balance, right? And you're also able to know when a relationship is not balanced for you. Then you've broken that spell. So these are the types of things that are part of why I'm teaching it like an immersive way, because we run the story of complexes and we don't even know it. Like the complex in Aquarius is the Peter Pan Captain Hook scenario. Okay. So for those, come along, join me in the immersion. Somebody was asking me to answer their question and I haven't forgot about you. I think it was Lingua. Have I pronounced that right? Lingua? All right, let's see where you are, Lingua. Is there a course where you live and read other participants' charts? I love learning from live reading. I mean, part of our Q&A section, we'll put up charts and we'll be able to, if somebody wants to have their charts read and we're applying the evolutionary astrology immersion techniques to it, yeah, absolutely. Like that's the beauty of like when I teach and when I'm teaching, I prioritize engagement. It's not about me standing there for like 2 hours or an hour and a half just like monologuing. It's a complete engagement experience. That's why a lot of people that I do teach and we do experience courses with me love it, because we're talking, right? You guys also are important and matter. So we learn from each other. Okay. Yes, exactly. I'm afraid of taking up too much space. Now your job is to say, hey, let me every single day just prioritize taking up a little bit of space until I gain momentum, and eventually I'm learning to just take up space. And you're actually evolving your chart. It's not an intellectual theory. Do you know what I mean? It's an actual lived experience of saying, today I'm participating in the existence of my life, right? Animating my existence, animating my life. That's how we use astrology. Okay. JC, right. Talk to me about Pluto in the 7th house, opposing Jupiter in the 1st, squaring Mars in the 10th. All right. So, okay. Pluto in the 10th, Pluto in the 7th house. So Jupiter in the 1st, squaring Mars at the T10th. What sign is your Pluto in? And what sign is your Mars in? And what sign is your Jupiter in? Okay. Libra and Neptune rising. Yes, that's right, with Pisces. Attract difficult relationships. Okay, so Pluto in Scorpio, Mars in Aquarius, Jupiter in Taurus. All right. So it feels to me that okay. Let's do it from an immersion point of view, right? So Pluto's in the 7th. So your core desire in this lifetime is to consistently understand relationships. Okay, so no matter how far you want to run away from relationships, they will always be attracted to you. You will always be attracted to them. They're always going to be in your life in some way or another. And it doesn't mean intimate always. It can mean friendships, it can mean relationships with family, etc. The context of your life is relationships. Okay? So that's the first thing. Now, Pluto wants to expose where in your life relationships are balanced, imbalanced, where there are unmet needs, and so on. Okay, so psychologically and emotionally, relationships are going to be super intense. Okay, that's where your deepest vulnerability lies as well. Now, the Mars square to your 10th house Aquarius says, I don't like expectations. Right, so either you go from, in relationships, you struggle to feel social demands and expectations and burdens. You don't want them. And yet you crave intimacy in relationships, which requires you to be, in some way, shape, or form, emotionally available for those. And you might attract people that are very self-sufficient and are either emotionally unavailable, or they themselves are emotionally not interested in those demands and expectations. Right? Okay. So, Pluto in the 7th house, the soul's desire is to uncover what relationships are about, how they work, what are boundaries, what is fairness, what's equality, etc. Your Jupiter in Taurus in the 1st says, I'm learning how to have a philosophy that is about self-reliance. So again, what you will probably fear is betrayal or loss or abandonment in relationships. And so you rely heavily on self-sufficiency and self-reliance as a way to protect yourself. And the Mars in the 10th house Aquarius tells me that you are, you either play the role of the giver, like the caregiver, and you're taking control and you're very like, okay, this is how it should be. This is how it's got to be, like the Captain Hook, right? You don't allow any vulnerability because you've been hurt once or twice. So you won't let people in. And so when you do that, you attract Peter Pan people into your life that are afraid of confronting their feelings and emotions and growing up. So you run that type of dilemma. Okay. Yep. Okay, well, what do I do? So the first thing you have to know is that Mars in the 10th house Aquarius, you're healing from psychological experiences where you may have not had permission to follow your own authority. So your Mars wants your Mars is like, hey, I want to be different. I want to be detached and removed, but you actually have to steal fire. With Mars in Pluto is about to conjunct your Mars, by the way. Okay, so that I suspect, which is why we're here, right? Okay, so your focus point should be this: in relationships, you're learning to be brave at knowing that vulnerability, betrayal, and abandonment are your greatest teachers. They're your greatest teachers. And if you either emotionally avoid them, Mars and Aquarius in the 10th, or you're going to emotionally avoid them anyway with Mars and Aquarius in the 10th. You either do it through a way of like disassociating into or regressing to a childlike state of wanting other people to hold that emotional safety for you, or you don't let anybody in. Right, that's the two ways that Mars is going to dictate, and it ultimately comes down to the fact that when you were being raised, that was an important need that wasn't met. You weren't given the space by your parents, and again, they didn't know this configuration, so we can't blame them, but we can understand how it originated. That Mars in the 10th is in Aquarius is like it's castrated, right? You've been castrated there. So you have to awaken your agency. You have to awaken the fact that to move beyond your being unseen as a child, and that your safety needs were like, you didn't have that space for that agency to say, I'm different, I'm going to pursue my own things. You didn't have that. So you have to learn to give that to yourself first. You have to learn to become your parent and internalize a parent that is able to know what boundaries are safe and what boundaries are not, where your threshold is for what is safe and what is vulnerable, and slowly start to develop and consciously grow towards seeing opening up in relationships as something that is healthy for you, and learning to find that internal resilience, Jupiter in opposition to your Pluto in Taurus, to learn to find that internal resilience, to say, even though you're opening it up and you're allowing people in, that there's a possibility that you could hurt it, and you will overcome that, and you will grow from that, and you will survive. And it's just learning just to give yourself that agency to say, I can meet those needs. Right? I can trust myself. I can ask the good questions. I can slowly open up to somebody. That's how you... Right, there we go. Dad was absent. Sun in the 12th house. Exactly. But that's the thing with EA. Oftentimes we can interpret the dad as being absent as, the loss. But with Mars in the 10th house Aquarius, part of your story was to live without any conditioning, so that you could figure out what the conditioning is and the rules are that you want to make for your life. So that's the thing with Mars in Aquarius. It's saying you're invited to figure out the laws that you want to define your life by and your relationships by, and the absence of the dad allowed for that to be present. But if we get stuck in the Plutonian loss and not see what invitation life has given us, then we can always see that as something that's taken away from us. But really, it's an invitation to actually say, well, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to decide with my life? What is the direction I want to take? And to not follow anybody else's rules other than my own. Does that make sense? Awesome. That's how we learn, through immersion style. 10th house, Aquarius. Aquarius is a signature of repression that leads us to split into two patterns of behavior. One of them is to stay regressed, the Peter Pan complex, and the other one is to become deeply Captain Hook, which is to say that life took my hand and I'm stuck in resent, right? I'm stuck in the fact that I've lost something, and then we can never move on. So when we work consciously with our planets in signs, what we want to do is balance the way that the experience manifested in our psyche. So with Aquarius, we're looking how to understand which pattern we generally tend to go towards, and then consciously work towards not letting that pattern be more present in our lives. And yeah, that is how you learn through an immersion way. Yeah. Okay. So we're going for 1 hour and 43 minutes. I think we'll continue for a little bit longer. Let's have a look. It's been excruciating, but wisdom has been gained. I'm glad that you see it that way, and I'm super sorry that it's been painful like that. But I'm hoping that this has helped you integrate it better. You notice that energy during the Aquarius new moon? Yeah, that's right. Great observation. Please, can you tell me about Mars-Pluto conjunction in Scorpio on the 5th with Saturn in that house too? Mars-Pluto square my Sun Capricorn on the 7th. Okay, let me see if I can read this again. Can you please tell me about Mars-Pluto conjunction in Scorpio? So that's natally for you. Yep. With Saturn in that house too. Okay. Yep. Mars-Pluto square my Sun in Capricorn in the 7th. Okay, so your Sun's in Capricorn in the 7th house. So your life mission here with Capricorn in the 7th house is to define who you are in relationships. So Cecine, your goal with that Mars Pluto now is, can you tell me what degree your Mars is and what degree your Pluto is, by the way? That's good. Are you there, Scene? Just let me know what degree your Pluto in Scorpio is, and your Mars in Scorpio is. Pluto's at 1 degree, Mars is at 3. Okay, so you got a new phase conjunction. All right. So my advice to you here when it comes to practically integrating that pattern is that this is a lifetime where your biggest priority is to follow your instincts, to follow your natural interests, to what things feel purposeful for you. And for the most part, you might not even have a conscious idea of what that is, but the soul does. Okay? Pluto and Mars are in a new phase relationship. And if you watch the Jupiter Cancer video, you'll know that the new phase relationship means the seed for a new evolutionary cycle to begin. So because it's so close, you won't actually have an idea of what that desire is about. It's like it's literally started in this lifetime. And so what you want to do here is you want to consciously pay attention to prioritizing what your sense of destiny is about and to pursue that relentlessly. Okay? And along the way, you'll come across experiences that will challenge your emotional need, Saturn, to see how your fate, your destiny is in your own hands, right? Okay, Pluto's a 2, Mars is a 3. Either way, it's still important. Okay, it's still the same theme. It's a completely new energy. It's literally been born. You will not have an emotional and psychological understanding of what it's about. So you can only prioritize your natural desires to follow things that appear interesting, meaningful, and like what you want to do, what you love, right? And you need to pursue it without any like attachment to what you think the outcome should be. And Saturn says this is where you're maturing, where you're growing up, where you're trading childlike idealism for reality. Okay, so that's why I say it's in your hands. You need to decide your fate. And the more that you consciously wake up with that idea of I'm in control of what fate I have and what destiny I want to manifest, and I got to show up for it every day, that Pluto new phase conjunction in Scorpio will show up for you. But remember, it all starts down with, do you see me? Do you see me? Here I am. This is me. That's a 5th house energy. That's what it looks like when you're emotionally engaged in it. So the soul is beginning a new evolutionary cycle there. Okay. How can we ground these topics? I find the Pluto ascendant points extremely relatable, but to be able to exist with a ton of Pisces energy in the 4th has been a struggle, obviously, with Pluto. Lol. Yeah, that I totally understand. I can see why that's the case. The thing with the ascendant being in Sag and a 4th house Pisces energy is that, again, we're overly identifying with the Pisces energy as in our Western culture, right? In our cultures, like we need to have order and we need to have patterns. But with a Sagittarius rising in a Pisces 4th house, your psychology is trying to fit into an Excel spreadsheet, right? The Excel spreadsheet is here's the order, here's the pattern I should follow. But your chart is somebody that's more of like a creative artist. You're the one that people stand at a gallery at and go, this guy's painting brings me into depth, not into what does the accountancy of all of these numbers add up to be. Okay, so it's about really stepping into the fact that a very big part of your life is more of the storyteller, more of the person that connects us with our feelings and our heart. And you do need to kind of find a way to cope within the Excel spreadsheet Western world that we live in. But you are very much at heart somebody who's a free roaming spiritual person who is meant to bring depth to not only your own life, but to others by stories of discovery and explanation and yeah, things that you find. Energy Arts Academy, can you comment on Mars balsamic to Pluto in the 1st? Only 4 degrees apart. So your Mars is in the 1st house along with Pluto? Yeah, it's scary as shit, but you're right. It's the truth. It really is. And that's the thing I meant about the Sag rising. we have the underlying assumption that our rising signs are something that's developed. They're not. The rising sign is every day I'm rising to this sign. So every day you're rising to more of a deeper connection with Sagittarius. Do you know what I mean? You're learning to live in more natural and organic ways. You're learning to live less from seeing the same routine every single day to having variety and change and adaptability and new faces and new experiences in your life. Okay. Van Gogh. Yes, that's right. But in James's place, I'm sure you probably want to be heard as well. All right. Okay. Arts Academy, your comment. You can you comment on Mars balsamic too? I just wanted to know. Yeah. Can you tell me if your Pluto and your Mars is still in the first house? Because if your Mars is in the 12th, it's a little bit different. Okay, so does everybody remember what the point of Pluto in your chart is about? Okay. Whoop, the chat's disappeared. Where is it? Okay, it's not loading. Do I still have an internet connection? Am I still here? Has the live ended? Maybe. Nope. Oh, there we go. Teaching the world to feel again. Yes, that is a really good point. It is teaching the world to feel again. Okay. Okay, let's see. I explain what Pluto is one more time. So all right, I'm looking ahead outwardly because I'm not listening to myself inwardly. Wow. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Intense emotional growth. Exactly. You still there? Okay. Yes, I'm still. Exactly. You're responding to me, Marie. The deepest nature of our unconscious desires. That's right. The core evolutionary pattern of our lives that's not going away. That's what Pluto in our chart is. So the more we embrace the location of our Pluto, the more we actually get to see the purpose of our lives. Okay. Has it been fun today, by the way, in terms of the live stream, peeps? Gosh, the internet is slow here for me. I might try something. Nope. There we go. Okay, chat's moving. Woohoo! Could you please riff on Pluto conjunct Pluto Libra in the IC? Its opposition to Venus at Aries. Yes, I can do that. I'll do that, David. Expose you to the core. That's right. Okay, the chat is running up again. Woohoo! Where's my Pluto? 10th house. Thanks very much, Lilia. Transformational arc to empowerment. Exactly. Okay. I'm just testing the stream's bitrate. Yes, I needed to update that. Okay. So I'm looking at the, yeah, that's definitely crashed. So I'm going to look at the chat that's in the live stream over here. Okie dokie. Let's make this bigger so I can read. Somebody asked me to riff on, no, I'm going to answer Energy Arts Academy first. Let's do that. Okay. Yes, first house Pluto. So the same applies. Like when Mars is in a culminating or a balsamic phase to Pluto, it's the same thing as a full moon. I'm sorry, as a new moon. Just before we have a new moon, the energy collapses, right? We have that balsamic moon, and then eventually the sun and the moon connect. But just before the moon's coming up to the sun like that, we have a balsamic phase, and that's like closing up. It's an end of a cycle. So Pluto conjunct Mars in the first house signals somebody whose desire nature relative to a direction that they've been going on in their life, or multiple directions that you've been going on in life. In this lifetime, there's an emotional feeling of things are coming to an end. So you are here basically going through and experiencing the culmination of so many different desires, and like feeling connected to them, excited to them, and then they just kind of lose their essence. And as they're losing their essence, this can be people, it can be experiences, it can be attachments to work, relationship dynamics. It doesn't matter. Whatever it was that the soul was experiencing with that entire evolutionary arc of Mars and Pluto, they're all being experienced this lifetime. So it can be pretty intense, especially around kind of like inconsistencies towards things that are losing your attention, or emotionally like losing your attention. So that's like the soul is ultimately culminating this lifetime. Okay. Which is your 10th house, Simon? Pluto's in the 10th house. Now I know everything about me. That's why I'm sitting here today, right? I got Sun conjunct Pluto. Okay. Yes. Exposed to the core. I'm sorry, peeps, if I've missed some of your questions, by the way. The chat moves pretty fast. I'm doing my best. There was a question. Somebody, could you please riff on Pluto conjunct Libra IC? Its opposition to Pluto and Venus and Aries. So the thing here is that because you're part of a Pluto and Libra generation, you're here to work through emotional and psychological attachments in relationships. So it's in the 4th house. You're learning to become emotionally reliant on your own safety. So you, prior to this life, you probably would have had, well, one or both parents was not able to meet your emotional needs, and that created a need to fulfill that through the other person. So relationships became a way for you to feel safe, and you would project that emotional need onto the other person for them to fulfill that, and then they wouldn't do that, and then you would experience betrayal and abandonment until you were forced to find your emotional security within yourself. Now, you could have taken the other route, which is you didn't open yourself up to any relationships, or did, but then they ended because of the fact that it was safer to be alone and not to be challenged emotionally, right? This is classic Pluto Libra dynamics. What you're learning to do here is to reclaim that agency, to reclaim that sense of power within yourself on an emotional level, to forgive the parent for not meeting that emotional need, to realize that you're in charge of meeting that emotional need. And then with that Pluto in opposition to Venus, you're looking to find ways to value independence within yourself and in other people, so that you yourself don't either attract relationships that are dependent on you and that you're in power then, or you are in relationships where you are dependent on the other person, right? You're trying to find that balance between not having those two extremes in your life. That's David, right? Asking about the Pluto. Hey, Melissa. Insightful? Okay. So is there anything else you'd like me to elaborate on that? Good night, Allegory, if that's what you're saying. Looking at the chats. Hey, Cherie. I know you joined us for a live once recently. Hope you're doing well. It's also part of a yod pointing to Taurus 10th house sun and Neptune, Pluto junk. Okay. Yeah, so that Pluto Taurus sun sign just amplifies the need for self-reliance in this lifetime. Like you're really looking to find and figure out what emotional needs you have and how those emotional needs become your boundaries and definitions, right? Our emotional needs inform us what we need to tell the world, and it's also how we meet those emotional needs within ourselves. So that sun sign would say your vision in this lifetime, your purpose in this lifetime is to find out and expose where your conditioning, where your sense of authority is either being placed in other people or it's being placed within yourself. And you're learning to place that authority within yourself and say, I can take this on. I can handle this intensity. I can go for this thing in my life. I can maintain this. So I'm curious, do you have that internalized sense of self-reliance and self-assurity? The guided tarot? Oh my God, thank you so much. I appreciate the $10. Please interpret my Pluto conjunct Jupiter on the MC. Okay, I can try my very best. Let's try this. Okay. So your Pluto is conjunct Saturn in the MC in Libra, okay? And it's conjunct your Mercury. Okay, conjunct my Mercury 0 degree Scorpio. Trine Neptune in Sag in the 12th, yep. 8 degrees away from my Venus on the ascendant in Capricorn. Saturn Libra in the 10th, oppose my moon, my 4th house moon in Aries. Okay, so the Saturn moon opposition, the Saturn in the 10th house in opposition to the moon in Aries in the 10th tells me that your parents had very different ways of defining the rules in the house. So the first thing that I would do if I worked with you is I would get to figure out which parent was the one that decided the rules and which was the parent that was very impulsive and took up a lot of space and dominated. Okay? Once you've figured out which parent was that, you'll find that the moon represents the parent that was more, here I am taking up space in your way, and the Saturn person would have been more diplomatic, and you might have probably more like a passive listener, but also probably felt like they couldn't have the agency to take up space. So that opposition is telling me that there's a dilemma between your identity of wanting to be sensitive and open and counsel giving, but then that moon in Aries is like, come on, take up space, make a confrontation, don't avoid this, don't hide, right? So your moon in Aries wants you to like be emotionally available and sometimes see that if that parent was, I don't know who it was, that part of their personality is important for you to not be forgotten or to remain like detached. Okay. And the Saturn in Libra in the 10th says, you're also learning to remember that if you always default to the other side's perspective, you're not allowing the other person or the environment to see what it is that matters to you. Okay. So that Pluto, that Saturn moon opposition is about learning to know when to stand up for yourself and say, this is me and this is what I want and this is the things that I want to pursue in my life. And at the same time, also be diplomatic enough to know that other people also deserve that same space. But then also to know, right, that if you let other people take up too much space and you're not taking up space, you have to own that within yourself. So it's literally like a pendulum between when am I listening and when am I showing up and participating? When am I listening? When am I showing up and participating? Okay. Now the Pluto conjunct the Jupiter at the MC says, I don't know what phasal relationship it is, but it tells me that part of your philosophy in life is going through a deep examination. You're basically learning how to become deeply honest emotionally with your truth. And the more that you can be honest with who you are and be more transparent and honest with who you are and live more aligned with what your natural philosophy is, the easier it is for you to become connected to a natural authority within yourself. Okay, so I'm going to try and string this together. You're here to live more honestly with who you are. To get to that space, you have to be confronted with internalized patterns of beliefs that hold you back from being honest. Maybe you're afraid of betrayal, maybe you're afraid of abandonment, but you're learning how to figure out what philosophy, belief system is the most organic and natural for you, and then to live like that. But you might, because you're part of the Libra generation, as a generation, we're still learning how to live more like that. Okay, so you're learning how to be safer in saying what you think, what you believe to be true, and you're learning how to become more present in what things you like and what you enjoy, Moon and Aries, okay, and not just be present for other people all the time. You're learning how to also be present for the things that matter for you and what your beliefs are and what you're interested in. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, yeah, that's amazing. I'm glad that's landed for you. And this is small steps, right? Just small steps. Just wake up every single day, prioritize an hour where you're just follow things that are freeing for you, and follow a certain belief system that's right for you. Make sure that you include yourself in the thing as well. Okay. All right, peeps, I am going to close up for today. It has been amazing to hang with you all for this live stream. I hope that it brought you value and things that were meaningful. Thanks very much. Good to hear that. Absolutely happy to hear that, Galatera. Yeah, own it. Just own your truth. You're here for that. Thanks very much. Arts Energy Academy. That's Tara, right? Thank you, Tara. Appreciate it. Okay, so go watch this recording afterwards. There's just so much in here. And don't forget, we released the new moon video in Virgo yesterday, so go check that out as well, by the way. And 2 quick announcements. One of them is the metamorphosis. If you want to work with me long term, if you want to go out through a whole entire guided journey of deep inner emotional transformation around your Pluto, the metamorphosis journey is for you. And I'd love to see if that's something that we want to do. So write to us, email, etc. I know there's a link here as well. I might send it. Just apply and we'll have a call and we'll see whether or not it fits for you. And the Evolutionary Astrology immersion, which is beginning super soon. So again, go check that out if you want to study and learn astrology with me in a very engaging way, and to be able to do the astrology way I've done it here. Okay, awesome. All right, peeps, have an amazing rest of the day. I'll catch you later. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.